Wait, is this thing on? Can y'all hear me? Okay, here we go.
Woo! Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Just a Dash. It is the second to last episode, y'all. And I feel like maybe that's not something that I should be like so celebratory about, but this has been quite the journey, y'all. And I think I'm finding it more and more important to value resting between great change in my life. I think we are going through different eras in our life. I think after 2020, after a year like 2020, you can't help but reevaluate and reassess a lot of things in your life and the goals that you're setting for yourself. And, Just a Dash was one of those goals for me. It's been a goal. It was a goal for over 2 years. Honestly, it was an idea for much longer than that. And so to be here feels like such an accomplishment. And I just want to thank everyone who's just been so warm and receptive to this experience, this journey, this passion project. I will say that it's a really interesting space to be in because I can honestly remember being so nervous about launching this and really not feeling 100%. And I think maybe that's the funniest thing about diving into something new, about stepping out of your comfort zone, quote unquote, which sidebar saw a hilarious meme about, comfort zones being such a funny word because they suggest that you're comfortable in any way. And this meme was like, I'm never comfortable. That's the problem. And I think that that's honestly kind of secretly a good thing because that means that if you're always uncomfortable, if you channel it the right ways, you're always evolving. You're always looking to become a better version of yourself or just kind of find purpose through just the different things that you're doing, the actions that you're taking, the people that are surrounding you, the people that are no longer surrounding you. Like, I think, it goes hand in hand with just like the changes you're making holistically in your life. And I think Just a Dash really is a reflection of that culmination of me, that decision to kind of step into possibilities and opportunities. And this is just the start. This is really just the brink, just the tip of the iceberg. It took so much mental hula hoops to get to the point of launching a podcast. And so to finally be near the end of season one, it's huge, y'all. And I say that because I think it's really important to make space for all your victories and all your wins, no matter how small they are. And that includes, honestly, you responding differently to a situation, really, determining and standing firm in the energy that you want around you and the energy that you don't want around you, making sure you're firm in your boundaries. There's just so many ways that little victories can show up, and I don't know, y'all. I know it seems pretty abstract, but Just a Dash is really a reflection of all the sorts of changes I made in my life. And so this is really more than just a podcast. It truly is just a dash of so many aspects of my life, even if you don't hear it on the air. It's really shaped in how I'm able to express myself. And so I just want to say thank you to every person who's sitting here and who has listened and who has offered any sort of support or any sort of inspiration in one way or another. So, so grateful for you. So, we got super vulnerable in that moment. I'm really excited too, y'all, because this is the first time that I am recording in an actual studio space. Yes, I want to shout out Thee Lord Scorpio. She really, Ximone is just really a great person in general, but she really is very motivational, encouraging, and she's the sort of person, if she gets put onto something, she is happy to share it with you. So thank you, X, because recording in a studio has been such a different experience. It was great to do it with my roomies, which let's jump into it. I think I've spent enough time being sappy. So in this episode, I'm really excited, y'all, because I'm always excited, as always, but the reason I'm excited is because I have a conversation with three people who are close to me just by proximity. They are my roommates. We live together. And I kind of go into why I wanted to have this conversation that I'm going to have with them. But just to kind of give it high level, something that I mentioned in the bonus episode was that I did want to talk about sex. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, it's definitely a little nerve-wracking. I am a private person by nature. I don't really talk about my shit in general, even off the air. So this is a vulnerable conversation in many ways. It's a delicate conversation. I think it's a really important conversation, though, because I know for myself, sex education has been a journey. I think for me, I really didn't get to explore my sexuality in any way, even at the most basic. And I don't want to say basic in a rude way, but at the level in which we're conditioned in terms of heteronormativity, this the heterosexual outlook, even that sort of education was very challenging for me. I think part of that was because I'm a woman, that's one, but I think also I was raised in a Caribbean American household and there was definitely certain challenges. I was also raised in a Roman Catholic household, and so there was just a lot of different, I would say, roadblocks, to be honest, just a lot of different areas that made it a little bit more challenging to navigate that topic organically. And so I wouldn't say that it was until adulthood that I really got to explore that more openly. I was one of those kids who wasn't allowed to date when they were 18. I had my first kiss when I was 19. So I just think, like, in terms of how society kind of structures the world of development, I felt very much like a late bloomer. And I talk about this a little bit more in the conversation, but when I was in college, my senior year of college, I took an elective course about sexuality and about sexual fetishes, and it just, it completely opened my eyes not only to the possibilities of sex and not just pleasure, but also just all the nuances that come from sexuality, whether that is the act of sex or that is how you express yourself or who you find yourself attracted to, but also just the world of how we condition who is allowed to like what and how they're allowed to like it and how they're allowed to express that and what comfortability people can find in those sorts of communities and those sorts of conversations and those sorts of dynamics and narratives. And so this is a long way of saying that my roommates and I each have had so many different experiences, as has anyone. So I really wanted to dive into this conversation with people that I know would be open, that I know would talk about it safely, or feel comfortable talking about it safely, rather, and also just give a different perspective than my own. I think everyone has gone through so many experiences. And so I guess what I would say, what I'm asking is, as you listen to this conversation, go in with an open mind. Don't think about, what you would do or what you would be comfortable with or what you consider to be, you know, up to a certain moral standard or not. I think for this episode, what I recommend, what I suggest is that you suspend, your belief systems, that you suspend what you consider to be appropriate or inappropriate. And I know that's a stretch because obviously I think there are universal areas where we can agree that, there should be respect and mindfulness. And really, what I'm coming down to is nowhere in this conversation are you going to hear anybody condone the idea of consent and communication not being at the forefront of sexual experiences. So just to put that out there, when I'm saying suspend, your belief or your mindsets about what's appropriate or inappropriate, that remains the standard in general across the board, no matter what. Like communication and consent is key. But it's a really intriguing conversation. I don't want to keep, going into it because, there's more in store. But before, obviously, we jump into say what, I do want to jump into a word to the wise. I do want to jump into an Are You For Real, y'all? Because it has been a crazy, crazy week. It has been a crazy last week. And we're going to jump into it a little bit. And we're going to jump into the rec room a little bit. And we'll take it from there. But anyhow, y'all, let's start off. Let's get off with word to the wise. Okay, y'all. So let's get into this week's word to the wise. This week's word to the wise was a little tricky for me to pick, y'all, because sometimes it depends. Sometimes I will, find my word to the wise just like as I'm scrolling through the gram. Sometimes it's from, an excerpt I've been reading if I was researching for a particular subject. In this case, because I was, doing so much research around sexuality and its relationship to millennials and Gen Z, I really also kind of was curious, what is the wisdom that we've given around sexuality? And I was very curious, and I came across, a few different ones related to intimacy, a few related to the actual ideologies of sexuality in relation to other constructs, whether that's sexual politics or new racism. And to be honest with you, I don't know. I think I'm gonna go much more so with the intimacy one because I think this conversation it feels less more about the politics of things when I'm talking about sexuality and more about the humanity of it. The quote I'm going to read is from John Green. And I think a lot of people know John Green for his almost like coming of age novels, YA, the YA book. So Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns. I think maybe the most famous one is The Fault in Our Stars. But this quote is actually from a book I haven't read yet that's called Will Grayson, Will Grayson. And I really loved it because it almost read like a monologue of what someone would say to you. And I just thought it was a wonderful way to kind of outline the spaces between sexual conversations when you like someone because I think a lot of times sex is associated with the physicality and not so much the intimate spaces of it, and the parts that we don't show ourselves. So here we go. Here's the quote. It reads like I'm speaking to someone. So performance. Here we go. No, 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 no. I don't want to screw you. I just love you. When did who you want to screw become the whole game? Since when is the person you want to screw the only person you get to love? It's so stupid, Tiny. I mean, Jesus. Who even gives a fuck about sex? People act like it's the most important thing humans do. But come on. How can our sentient fucking lives revolve around something slugs can do? I mean, who you want to screw and whether you want to screw them? Those are important questions, I guess, but they're not that important. You know what's important? Who would you die for? Who do you wake up at 5:45 in the morning for, even though you don't even know why he needs you? Whose drunken nose would you pick? So that's the end of that quote. And what I really loved about it, obviously, there are nuances to it. I think everybody experiences their desires, their needs differently. But what I really loved about it is that when you do experience intimacy with a person, I think a lot of times people think that sex is really what takes up that definition or that's what we're talking about. I actually remember when I got out of a relationship when I think I was 23 going into 24. I might have been 22 going into 23. It was not a good relationship. It was a pretty toxic relationship for various reasons. And I do remember when I got out of the relationship, just, in different conversations, people of different generations, usually older than me, would kind of basically suggest that, it sucks that you're breaking up with this person when you've basically been intimate with them in a way. And doesn't that kind of ruin, doesn't that kind of bring you I guess the only way to say it is doesn't that actually make you feel a type of way that you've been intimate with this person and now you're no longer with them and they've done wrong by you, like I think that is sometimes an unconscious blame and shame that's put on women. At least I have found in my experience. And I'm not sure if men experience it the same way, but I have found in those sorts of circumstances, I've had to kind of course correct those conversations and say that for me, when I get out of a relationship, of course, like not having sex with that person is difficult. I mean, not having sex in general after you've become a sexually active person has its challenges, right? But in the same token, there's so much more you share with a person beyond just your physicality. And even in that, when you do share a part of your physical self with someone, especially someone who you care about, it depends on the nature of your relationship. In the context of this quote, I'm assuming it's someone you care about. It's not just about what makes sex sex, what makes it pleasurable, what makes it enjoyable, is not just like the body parts coming together. It's the essence of someone being shared with you. It's their soul, it's their love, it's their care, it's their tenderness, it's their mindfulness, it's their freedom, it's their vulnerability, it's the way they give themselves over to you and vice versa. It's the way they trust you. And so I guess like for me, I'm what I love about this quote and what inspired me about this quote is that I hope that when we talk about sex in the future, when I think about how I want sex to be expressed to future generations, I hope that we're talking about the spaces in between the physical. I hope we're talking about what it means to be intimate with a person, what it means to open up yourself to a person, regardless of how deep that emotional web goes for you. Because you can also have a one night stand with someone and still share some intimacy with them in some way. And I guess what I loved about this quote as well is that it was speaking to the idea that sex should not be a space to fill some sort of void. It is something that we are, and it's also not something to feel any sort of shame around or to be misguided on or to find misdirection in. It's a delicate space, but it's also something that animals do. And the way we talk about it should be with, I think, more reverence in the sense of understanding that it does far greater for us than we may realize to share that space with someone. But I think at the same token that we not put it on some sort of morality code because it's something that all animals do and is also something that we are supposed to glean pleasure from. It serves multiple purposes, and I think it would do us well to just look at sexuality holistically and comprehensively and also look at intimacy that way and understand that it, similar to what was said in the quote, that it obviously is very important. It's definitely a priority, I think, for many people in relationships, but it's okay if it's not the number one priority. It's okay if other things equate to that priority. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think my generation, I think the generation after me is definitely starting to become more comfortable with just all the different ways that sexuality can be explored. And so that was really cool. I thought it tied really well into the subject today that we were talking about. And so that is your word to the wise, y'all. You got a little monologue from me this time, but I hope you enjoyed it. And without further ado, we're going to jump into Are You For Real? And then we will get into Say What. So thanks for listening so far, y'all. Take a break if you need to. And let's get into it. Let's go.
Just a dash.
So let's get into Are You For Real? Because this past week has been, how you say, a shit show, y'all. First of all, let's just kick it off with the fact that Bill Cosby was released from jail. So just to make it clear, because I think there's been a little bit of confusion to as to why Bill Cosby was released from jail. He wasn't released from jail because he's innocent. A panel of Pennsylvania State Supreme Court judges basically ruled that there was a vast violation of his due process rights when he was criminally charged and convicted, a decade after a previous prosecutor had declined to prosecute him in order to urge him to sit for a civil deposition instead, which was ultimately used against him in his criminal trial. So basically it seems like there's some sort of legalese that kind of got in the way of this man still being where he belongs, which is in jail. And it's a slap in the face. Cosby, he thanked his supporters and he tweeted a photo of himself on Wednesday night. And he said he's never changed his stance or his story. He's always maintained his innocence. And it's like, sir, you're not out of jail because you're innocent. So let's start there. But also, unfortunately, wow, his TV wife, Felicia Rashad, who, I think everybody loves her. She's everyone's, TV mom, I think, to a certain degree. It was really disappointing. She spoke out basically in support of this man, and she received a lot of backlash. And then she was chastised by Howard University, which she recently became a acting dean of. And, they basically disassociated with what she had written. I think she had tweeted it, and then she followed up by basically apologizing naturally and saying that, she holds space for all the survivors and whatnot. And it's like, clearly you don't, because you wouldn't have made that sort of statement on a public platform. And I get that people don't necessarily always think before they speak, but that's the problem. I think it's really important that people not just be reactive, but really consider the power of their words and the power of their platform. And I think that's a perfect example. I also want to say in regards to Bill Cosby, because I think it's always a little complicated. I think, Bill Cosby gave us the Cosby Show. That was a brilliant show. Like, we can sit here and lament about who Bill Cosby is as a person. That doesn't necessarily detract from the fact that prior to us having knowledge of who he was, the content he gave us was truly impactful. It really did something for the black community. Of course, there was also a lot of negative things about how Bill Cosby really spoke about aspects of the black community that were really harmful and really gave way to stereotypes, right? So people are complex, people are multifaceted. I say this all the time, but I do think it's possible to kind of hold that truth and understand that The Cosby Show was a great show of great influence and really for a lot of people is held in a lot of high esteem. Bill Cosby is also a person who carries different identities. And what I mean by that is he was an actor. He's also somebody's father. He was somebody's abuser. He's all these different things. And so I think all those things have to be looked at comprehensively. And so when I think of Felicia Rashad, this was her co-star. This is someone who she has a very specific relationship and dynamic with. And it is entirely her prerogative to believe whatever she chooses to about the certain circumstances that have been put before us and the certain evidence that have been put before us about this man's behavior and his actions. That being said, even with this error that happened within the legal system, there is an overwhelming amount of evidence that this man committed the crimes that he was convicted for, that he was found guilty for. And I'm not going to even give power to what those crimes were or detail them because they're incredibly triggering, I'm sure, for many people, myself included. The point is that I don't think that we should be using our justice system as any sort of example of what justice is supposed to look like, because time and time again we see the miscarriages of justice over and over again, which, to that end, our second miscarriage of justice, which took place this week, was Britney Spears' conservatorship not being turned over. The judge denied her request on Wednesday to remove her father, James Jamie Spears, as the conservator of her estate. And she had asked for him to be suspended immediately upon the appointment of a financial institution as her sole conservator, and it was denied without prejudice. That's what the Los Angeles Superior Court ruled. And by the way, with Bill Cosby, that was the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. So we're at Supreme Court level, y'all, and these sorts of injustices are occurring. And it's really disappointing. I mean, Britney Spears is 39 years old. She's been under a conservatorship with her father for the last decade. And last week, her testimony, it aligned how she was overworked without any breaks, how she was medicated with lithium, how she was prohibited from having more children after her conservators wouldn't allow her to remove her IUD. She's not allowed to get married. She's not allowed to travel. So many things that, really just infringe on basic human rights. And this is coming from a person who sounds perfectly coherent, to be honest with you. Not that Britney Spears does not need help. Obviously, she's going to have to need help after experiencing what she's experiencing, but this is someone who has, I think, shown time and time again that they are capable of making decisions for their own life. And to hear a statement like that so openly and so genuinely, I mean, by the public, y'all, we all heard it. We can listen to it now. And for the response to that to be that, no, we think you still need this man who is clearly abusing his power to still be in charge of your life. I mean, I think we're just watching the patriarchy like just in full-fledged effect. Like, does not give a flying fuck about what this woman said, what this woman expressed on a public platform, no less. What I hope we take from this, because it's a little difficult to know, how do we navigate through two slaps in the face? And there's a third slap in the face, y'all. Sha'Carri Richardson, you know, she failed her drug test, tested positive for marijuana, despite the fact that it is legal in Oregon where she's from, but it is against the rules at, the sports level. And, that has opened up, I think, a larger conversation because she spoke about how she consumed marijuana as a response to learning about the death of her biological mother from a news reporter. When I think of the miscarriage of justice that we are showing to women, when I think of the injustices that are being showed to underprivileged and underrepresented people, to women of color, men of color, it's just, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's 2021. And I gotta tell you, y'all, more and more, sometimes I'm just like, wow, we need to either hit reset, refresh, restart, unplug the computer, put it back in, or somebody just unplug me from this matrix because what are we doing? This can't be it. I know we talk about, I've spoken about this before for sure, is like, I don't know how this world came to be. I don't know how these constructs came to be. Everything is really, really layered. If you sit down and think about it a little too hard, it might overwhelm you. But I have a very strong feeling that the mishaps, not even mishaps, the boushasha, the absolute nonsense, the absolute just travesties of Bill Cosby being released from jail, Britney Spears' conservatorship not being overturned, and Sha'Carri Richardson not being able to race because of marijuana, I don't know. It seems like we're moving backwards. And so I'm hoping that this continues, like what we're hearing, the news that we're intaking, that we continue to be alarmed by what we're hearing, that we continue to not let these announcements, these shakeups stop us from speaking out against them. I think it was important that Felicia Rashad was held accountable, that Howard University made very clear that they didn't align with the things that she said. I think it's so important that we continue to speak out against the justice systems that are doing wrong by someone like Britney Spears, and that it's fantastic that people are also letting go of the notion of the fact that someone might be wealthy or someone might fit into, be white or black or fit within this identity. It is about how we are treating each other as human beings. That is what it boils down to. Where is the humanity? Because it seems to be missing. And we shouldn't be operating that way. If somebody does something that causes harm in a way that is, in some ways, unforgivable or irreparable or irrevocable, they need to be held accountable. And they can be upset and they can be hurt and they can lament and they can defend and they can defy, but consequences are consequences. And that's just the reality of how life works. So, I don't think necessarily that the justice system constantly reflects that in a way that's equitable or is able to, because there are gaps, there are nuances, there are definitely biases which exist within our systems and within our social constructs that have led us to these three injustices that we, have witnessed in the past week. And it's really definitely discouraging. But like I said before, let it be fuel. Let it be fuel because while I just said it's discouraging in the same token, it's discouraging that the world is still like that. But what is encouraging is that we cannot let it stay this way. Bill Cosby being out of jail, that might end up being in the 24-hour news cycle and then it's a wash and then people move on with their lives. But I think it's less about this man being out because, he's not going to be able to live a normal life ever again. Whatever that looks like, karma will take care of what it needs to take care of in all these situations. But that's my point really at the end of the day, is that karma will take care of the larger picture. The smaller picture is, why are we even running into these sort of legal issues? Why is someone like Bill Cosby even being offered a deal that allows him to get out of jail for what he was able to do? Why is someone like Britney Spears, who clearly needed a different sort of helping hand, when she was at the lowest point in her life mentally, but instead people took advantage of her so that they could get access to her wealth and her power and misuse and mischaracterize it. Why do we have a system that even allows for conservatorship to have been applied to someone like Britney Spears? It doesn't even make sense when you outline what this woman was experiencing and the support that she should have received. Why is someone like Sha'Carri Richardson, who has gone through enough hardship and who has excelled beyond what anyone could have imagined, why are we punishing this person for a coping mechanism that most of us take on every day? Smoking weed is now legal. And I understand that that doesn't tie well with the rules and regulations of her sport, and she was aware of it. But we're acting like marijuana slows down her running? I'm not saying let's just bend the rules for anybody. What I am saying, though, is that we have to look at how things need to evolve. It's absurd to think that things should stay the same or that our responses to certain circumstances or understandings of mental health, of mindfulness, of sexuality, of sexual assault, of autonomy, all these things evolve. And the rules and regulations that have been put in place to manage those systems and those constructs and those moral codes also need to evolve in a way that actually is in line with justice systems that benefit the people whom they are supposed to be protecting and serving. So I'm going to leave it on that little note. I'm going to tie it up on that little bow. That, is my soapbox. The last thing I will say, which is really cool, just super, super quick about Meg the Stallion, she's partnered with Cash App to give away 1 million worth of stock to her fans, which I read about in Ebony, and I just think that's so cool. She's slated to launch a series of financial education videos called Investing for Hotties. So I wanted to leave on a positive note because I do think it's incredibly important to remember that there's still good things being done out there, even in the midst of bad news or, our construct of what's at least not leading to progress. So I want to leave with that. Shout out to Meg the Stallion. Okay, Investing for Hotties. I'm going to check it out, y'all. I'm not going to put it in the rec room because I haven't even watched it yet. But I think it's great that she's out here teaching the youths, teaching people about the importance of autonomy and investing in yourself. If there's anybody I think who is combating all the things I just spoke about, it's Meg the Stallion. So include her as the, tie-in of the bow for this Are You For Real? And with that being said, y'all, take a break, grab some tea, grab a drink, grab some water. I don't know, whatever whatever's you're liking. And join me back because we are about to hop into Say What? Here we go. Let's go.
Just a dash.
You are locked in
We are
and loaded.
vibing. Now.
It is now time for. No, okay, y'all. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's get started. Oh, I'm so excited. So obviously, I don't even know how to start this because it's so interesting. I'm really excited to have this conversation with y'all. I'm gonna let y'all introduce yourselves first because sometimes I end up chatting too much before I let my guests introduce themselves, and I really want people to kind of get a sense of who's going to be in the room having this conversation, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second what the topic is today for Say What. But we're going to start with introductions. So I have 3 special guests today, and you'll understand why they're special guests in a moment. But first I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I'll start off with you. And like I said before, everyone can just share, who you are, what you do, and why you love what you do. So please take it away.
My name is Molly. What do I do? I am a grad student at Emerson. I'm studying writing for film and TV. And I really love doing that just because I just really love storytelling.
Yes, I love it.
My name's Brendan Brown. I study philosophy at the New School of Social Research. The reason why I love philosophy is I don't know, I think that it's a important thing to think deeply about the world, and perhaps we don't do that enough in the modern day and age. And there's a lot of great things in the world that need to be highlighted, and there's a lot of bad things in the world that need to be highlighted. And if I can do maybe just one of those once, it's a good good career.
I love that. I didn't even know that, B.
I had to make it up on the spot.
Sentimental.
I was searching for like a good philosophy quote, like philosophy is a disease that can only be cured by philosophers, but I felt that was a little too
It
gauche.
seems like something you would
Like
definitely
Webster's
say.
dictionary.
Correct,
defines
correct,
philosophy.
literally. I'd be
Webster's.
dropping definitions in episodes sometimes. I'd be like, so I found this definition because I actually didn't know what this word entirely meant. Like, that's really why I ended up in that position. And last is certainly not least, I'm actually very excited for this last guest because this is the voice you hear every time Just a Dash opens up. So please tell the people who you are.
Hi, people. I'm Ximone. You can call me X or Lord or Scorpio or
X
anything.
gonna give it to you.
Anything royal, anything with honor, really. And I'm a recording artist and a songwriter and a pothead. I don't know. Can I say that?
You can say that.
Okay.
It's fine. It's legal.
Yeah.
Police gonna come busting through the door.
Oh my gosh. Honestly.
This is the moment. This is the setup.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I love being a songwriter because it's just like my means of expression. I'm not like the most vocal person in like life, so music is definitely helpful. And I like smoking weed because it's just dope. So yeah.
Period.
Literally is dope. Yeah.
It makes you so cool.
Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. So the reason I said these are extra special guests is because these are all my roommates, y'all. We all live together. I'm not giving my address out because everyone here will be famous at some point and I just don't want us to get bombarded, you know? Like I just want to keep our privacy. But thank you everyone for talking about what you love to do because I think one of my favorite things about our household, I actually refer to our home as a household, y'all. I really love my roommates. We have I think it's one of the healthier dynamics in my life and one of the healthiest roommate dynamics I've had in New York. And I think that's because everyone here is really genuine about wanting to create a space that's better for everyone in every avenue. And I think that's not just in how we live together, but the things that we're pursuing in our life. Like, we very much encourage each other to follow our passions. And I think, of course, everybody has their hang-ups and everyone has their triggers, but I think we always do our best to kind of walk through those things, even if there is some tension. So I think it's just kind of created a really safe space. And I don't know if y'all necessarily agree with that entirely. That's definitely my own
agree.
opinion.
Oh my god, yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I
Yeah.
feel the same. It is like the most comfortable roomie situation. And it's just nice to be in a space with different types of people. You know, there's no like majority of anything.
Yeah.
It's always nice.
In the how long have I lived here? 7 years now? Wow.
In New York.
Yeah, in the 7 years that I've lived in New York, I have not had one good roommate situation.
Wow.
Talk about
And
it.
now we're here.
Yeah. And it's also really cool because I think everyone's dynamic, especially B and X moved in last year in the middle of COVID. And so I think it was also such a different experience for them, I'm sure. And also for Molly and I. Molly and I have known each other since our bookstore days. We used to work together. So I think everybody really kind of had to form these different sorts of dynamics and relationships. And I mean, we're coming up on a year. And I think we've experienced so much within a year. And we actually just have, I think our relationship I feel like when you're stuck with people in a space for a long time, you kind of have no choice but to get to know each other and get to understand each other. And so I think we were in a unique position. So it's really cool. And I'm saying all that because today's conversation is about sex, baby.
Ooh, a hot topic.
A hot topic. And I wanted to talk about it with my roommates, with these sweet peas, because this is the shit we talk about at home. I think we have a different level of comfortability. I think talking about sexual experiences, sexual proclivities, whether that's our own experiences that have been negative or positive, or just speaking about how sex is spoken about in the world, different constructs that relate to it. But like always, I'm going to give a little background. And then, we have different areas that we're going to cover. And we'll see how the conversation flows. It's always really intriguing. Everyone here has very different perspectives, very different experiences. And I just want to say before we jump into the questions that everyone here, you can share you don't have to share anything you don't want to share. This is really a safe space for you to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about, whether it's personal or whether it's just an objective observation of the world. So I just want to set that tone because I feel like sexual experiences are actually pretty subjective, and they can also be very sensitive. So this really is kind of a space to explore that safely, objectively, and yeah. So let's get started. So basically, I was interested in this topic because in the land of hookups and it's complicated and down for anything, I always wonder how people can tackle conversations about sexual expectations and boundaries and nonverbal cues. And I know, like everyone here, I have found myself in a lot of gray areas before, and some of which I, haven't been negatively impacted by. Some of those have been intriguing, and others that, I've had to recover from, that have been traumatic. And, in 2021, I don't think it's a secret that our culture has become more tolerant of sex and sex positivity, or it appears that way at least in almost every variation. When you think about it, shameful terms like perversion, they're no longer associated with the word kink. Or, polyamorous is now a household word. That's not a strange thing if someone's polyamorous. You can use apps to arrange for casual sex within an hour. And anal sex is not like a taboo. It's considered fifth base, so much so, y'all, that there is a Teen Vogue article about how you do anal sex. This is now...
I remember that time when we were all just publicly declaring our love of eating ass. Does anyone remember that?
Oh my god, no.
Of like last year when everyone was just like, if you don't eat ass, you're not a good person.
Oh my
These
God.
four people here?
No, I'm saying like as like a public...
in
No,
the
no, no.
zeitgeist.
Yeah, as a public discourse.
Okay, because I was
Yeah.
like,
We were
I
all just
don't
like,
recall
eat
us
ass.
having that statement. Is that a mantra we all
No,
came up
it's
with? I
like-
don't...
But yeah,
Don't put me
people-
down for that.
But I don't
They
think
were.
you're wrong, because I do, not even, it's not even anal, but also like men performing oral sex on women. I remember when DJ Khaled said
Oh,
he
yeah.
didn't do that.
Yeah.
Make him an
And
ass.
then no, the lead singer of Smash Mouth was like, that's stupid, basically.
Right. Which, I love it, because we're going to
Which
get
brought
into it.
Smash Mouth back. You're welcome.
Amazing.
Remember Smash Mouth's horrible 9/11 tribute that
Oh
they
my
did?
God, no, we're not getting into it.
We
We're
don't
not
need to
getting
do
to it. We're not going down that lane, B. We're not. Like, no, you
Listen,
will.
they go down on their ladies.
You will
so-
take us. You will take us down the most obscure tangents,
That's
and
fair.
we can't have that on Just a Dash.
Gotta be cunning linguist.
But I will say, outside of incest, bestiality, and of course non-consensual sex, don't even make a joke, B.
I just didn't expect bestiality to be first on that list. I'm sorry.
There's not much that I think people don't speak publicly about, or see visibly portrayed generously, like or graphically within media. We have shows like Sex Education, which talks about sex humorously but offers insight into the nuances of intimacy. And then you have other shows like Sense8, which feature like orgy sex scenes, which I know are responsible for some teenagers like first wet dream, 100%. And sexual proclivity just essentially runs the gamut. So with all that being said, though, this is what's really interesting, y'all. So when I was doing research on this, I found out that this generation of teens, so the generation, I guess it would be Gen Z,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? That's what they're called? I never know.
Zoomers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're actually having less sex than the generation before them. And so I found just a couple of reasons that might be why. Anthropologist Helen Fisher, she studies love and sex, and she co-directs Match.com's annual Singles in America survey.
Doing the
I haven't
awards
gotten
there.
it, but I would fall into that. And she claims, like many other experts, that the decline in sex is attributed overall to a decline in couplehood among young people. So for a quarter of a century, fewer people have begun marrying, and some are marrying later. So basically, 60% of adults under the age of 35 now live without a spouse or partner. And people who live with a romantic partner tend to have more sex, a.k.a. if you're still living with your parents over a certain age, your sex life is probably not as thriving. But that's not the sole explanation. They've also found that the share of American men who reported masturbating in a given week doubled, while women more than tripled. And that's attributed to easy access to porn, a.k.a. people have gotten used to satisfying themselves, especially when you were locked down for a year. And some people have also said that the internet makes it easy to gratify yourself, socially and sexually, so there's far less of an incentive to put yourself out there in the real world to satiate your desires. It's also the arrival of internet, people have rising rates of anxiety and depression, which is also associated with social media, which also inhibits sexual impulses. And other critics have blamed online dating for alternating the romantic landscape. So over a short period of time, it's become less acceptable to strike up conversations in real life without seeming inappropriate or creepy, So people really don't know how to navigate social spaces anymore romantically, which kind of eliminates you being able to have sex with someone outside of a social media space, if that makes sense. So basically, romantic experiences are really, really prearranged. But on the flip side, in 2012, 30% of women said they experienced pain when they had vaginal sex, but they didn't feel comfortable telling their partners, and they just internalized that physical discomfort, right? But in 2021, that's changing. That's not really acceptable. Women are realizing what they want out of sex. They realize healthy sex is linked to a happy life. So having a partner who cares about your needs is a stronger predictor for happiness. So that also changes how they'll navigate their sexual experiences. They're also more empowered to say no thanks, and they're becoming more aware of what healthy sex means for them. So really, in all that, thank y'all for listening to my TED Talk. What we've gathered, in the modern era, wow, look at me go, is sex positivity is growing, but so are criticisms about how sex has been portrayed, navigated, experienced, and perhaps most importantly, how it's being taught and talked about in education. So intimacy is truly more elusive than ever. And I found this little quote that it was in this Atlantic article, and it said, we hook up because we have no social skills. We have no social skills because we hook up, which I thought was really, really interesting. So with that being said, this is a really broad topic. There is a lot to cover. I want everyone here, again, to feel safe speaking candidly about their experiences at your level of comfort. And I just ask that if you're using any examples with people involved, just keep it anonymous. And we'll also speak candidly about broader areas. So the questions I have for y'all fall into 3 categories: intimacy, relationships, and sex education. And with that, are y'all ready to dive in? Yes. Okay, so we're going to start with intimacy. And I kind of want to keep it broad. I didn't want to find a definition for intimacy because I actually think that's very subjective. So my first question for y'all, and anyone feel free to speak up, honestly. What does intimacy mean to you?
I'd say for me, this isn't a concrete answer, I'm only 25, but I think intimacy is like vulnerability and like the comfortability in being vulnerable, even if like at least I know for me, I find it hard to be vulnerable like by myself. So if I'm able to do that with someone else, I definitely think that that's a huge part of intimacy. It doesn't have to be physical. Emotional intimacy is actually something that I really value. But yeah, just being able to kind of just not only be yourself, but like really get into your fucking emotions, like, and not think twice about, oh, fuck, I'm embarrassed, or they're gonna think I'm fucking weird, or like whatever hysteria can come out of just being you and going through the motions as you would. It's like co-regulation, really, like just someone to kind of pour into and know that is going to be there in an intimate way.
Wow, like a true Scorpio.
Yeah.
So just kind of gets to the point.
When you said that, because like is articulated so well, because intimacy for me has always been something like it's a feeling that I can't accurately describe. Like it's
very abstract.
Yeah, I just feel close to someone, and I like can't like completely categorize like why. I just do.
Yeah. It's like an unspoken sort of comfortability.
But how Ximone just explained it
kind of covers it. What were you going to say, B?
No, I just think that last quote you left with, like, we have sex because we have no social skills, and we have no social skills because we have sex. I think that I think that quote is absolute dog shit. I think that quote's like a very old boomer Zoomer, type
I'm sure that article was written by a boomer.
Yeah. And I think that maybe to try to spin it positively, I think that the reason why we have sex is because we don't have to be social anymore. And we can, kind of slough off this social self that is very constructed. And I think that our social selves throughout our, human history have been constructed, and perhaps with sex, that's the moment when you don't have to be this constructed kind of idea of who you are, and you can just kind of have almost that immediate idea, the immediate experience of being with someone instead of what am I looking like? What are they thinking of me? How
Yeah.
does this best present myself? I think that the idea that, you know, sex is something about social skills really highlights how previous generations thought of sex as a game or as a way of manipulating other people and as like a way of thinking about how am I going to like just go out and trick someone into thinking something better or
Or
something
just
worse,
using
you
it
know?
for procreation, not
Yeah.
even having that kind of how we're talking about intimacy, like
Yeah.
just not even seeing sex beyond, I don't know, I mean, not veering off into sex just yet, but like intimacy for me, it kind of covers what everybody is saying. And I definitely agree with Molly in the sense that I don't even just use intimacy for romantic relationships. I would say our relationship is
Yeah.
intimate in some ways. You know, I would say my relationship with my best friends is intimate. To me, it definitely is closeness. And that's not just physically, that is with my spirit, that is with my mind. It's really just kind of this unspoken understanding. I think intimacy for me also includes trust. Like if I, and it's kind of what you were saying, X, like just being able to open up and be vulnerable with someone and to know that they'll hold space for that, or that even if they, you know, don't respond correctly, I can call them out. Like, you know, there's just a way to have a genuine relationship with someone. So, but speaking to what you were saying, B, that actually does kind of pull us into our next question, which is, so you were talking about nowadays that, you know, it's a little bit different in the sense of comfortability that people have, you know, in bedroom spaces with people, or at least that's what we strive for, you know? So, and again, answer as comfortably as you'd like, but what do you think determines sexual comfortability, or how do you find that you feel comfortable in those spaces, or you feel confident in those spaces? And what has allowed you to kind of get to that space? Like, how did you learn to become sexually comfortable with yourself?
I think it has to do with, ironically, or perhaps what people would not associate the most, but I think it has to do with boundaries and not necessarily the sort of letting up of boundaries that intimacy is sort of, you know, you put all boundaries down, but I think in some sense it's the most strong of your boundaries to be intimate with someone and to know truly your self-worth and maybe yourself just in a way to be intimate with someone, I think is how you are able to be comfortable, is to know your value and to know what you don't want people to do, what you do want people to do. And that's very hard. I don't know if I'm still there yet. I think I'm still working out. You know?
Yeah. I like, I don't know if maybe this goes more towards like education, but how I feel like, I don't know if it's our generation or just nowadays it's more normalized to talk throughout sex, because like obviously the like
how's your day going?
big
Like,
no I mean like
What did you
checking
get for lunch?
in.
When is that happening though? Is that happening at the beginning? Like
No. I mean, like, checking in. Do you want me to do this?
Right,
do
right,
you
right.
like that? Like that's what I mean. Because I, like, when I lost my virginity, I was, like, so nervous, and I thought I talked way too much. And I was like, well, no, that was just a nervous moment,
Reaction,
obviously,
yeah.
that I was having. It was genuine and real, but I, like, I don't want to say I beat myself up about it, but I just remember, like, I was like, I'm the one who made that experience, like, you know, awkward and
Right,
embarrassing, because I was just talking so much. But then I was like, oh, so I just shouldn't talk. Like, that'll make things cooler or whatever. And then, like, all throughout college, like, I didn't really have, like, a relationships. It would just be like one night stands, and I'd just be like, I'm not really getting what I want from this. And then my last like consistent sexual partner, like we just talk all the time. And it just made it that much more comfortable because it was like we were telling each other what we wanted. Which sounds so simple.
Well, I think that's what ties to the whole social skills, though, because I mean, I think it's really layered, all the experiences you shared, Malls, because I do think part of it is like growing more comfortable with yourself. I think part of it is also gender constructs and differences and how women are also kind of, I know for myself, I don't know how anybody also learned about sex. I didn't learn about sex from a parent. Like, I didn't really have, and my mom, she believes that we had that conversation. I don't remember it, is how I'll put it. So it wasn't something for me that I digested. I'll put it that way. So I learned about sex through media. I learned about sex through hearing it at school, and for me, I consider myself a late bloomer. For me, that was 22. And I think for a lot of people, like, at least for me growing up, that was considered so late. So I think, in terms of exploring my own sexuality, that came for me like in adulthood. But the thing is, though, when I'm talking about like exploring my sexuality, I'm talking about with another person. I was always exploring sexuality prior to that. Yeah. I was always interested in like just the biology of sex, like the sensation, the feeling, like even exploring my own body. I think that was a huge part of it for me, was also understanding myself. So, and I am kind of a person, I enjoy being with myself. And so I do think a lot of exploration for me just came from self-pleasure, like, to be honest with you. And then as I got older, and I got to experience sexual experiences with other people, I think then it was less about the physicality of things and more like what you're saying, Molly, with like, how do I communicate what I want? And I think to B's point, I have found the most power and comfortability when I establish my boundaries. Like when I make it clear, like, oh, I'm down to try that, or that's not for me, And there have been situations where I feel like those boundaries have been crossed, even when I've spoken up. And so, like, it's really this kind of delicate space that I also think I'm still exploring. But I definitely agree that I would definitely say boundaries is how I would feel most confident sexually and most comfortable.
Sheesh. I mean, I think for me, I don't really know. It's such an interesting question because I feel like I had sex like a lot. I was just having a lot of like pointless sex as I was just not only, I don't even think I was trying to even learn what sex was. I was so displaced from like the actual meaning of that act that I just wanted to do that and like feel the the basic pleasures of sex, no matter whether it's really good or bad. It just physically brings something to you. And so I was in that for like several years, probably between like 17 and 22. Like it was very just, this is just what it is. This is what it is. This
was just physical?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I definitely dated people along the way, but even still, like, that comfortability wasn't necessarily there because I don't think I was doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
Even in, like, dating someone, I don't think that there's a such thing as, like, hooking up too soon. When you're dating someone, do whatever you want. But I think for me, like, I was just doing it so quickly that I was like, there is nothing more than this. Like, I'm just going to be engaging with somebody who clearly wants to do this with me. I don't have to think too much because they're either going to tell me what to do or move me around however they want to, or like I just didn't have like a meaning of like what sex is until I honestly started dating women. And then when I started dating women, I just felt like, yeah, that sense of just like, is this okay? Can we do that? Are you okay with this? And not only just like the first time, but just like throughout the rapport of like being intimate with someone. I think that's like makes me really comfortable just to be like, oh wow, like not even just like comfortable, but you really are checking on me. Like you're checking on me, you're making sure that like I'm feeling good. And sometimes that could be a great turn on is just you wanting to check in with how I'm doing. Be like, okay, like I'm down now. Like we can do this now. So it was nice dating women, and I think that's probably why I've kind of settled in dating women mostly now. Is just like I just feel more comfortable. I don't feel as like told to do whatever I'm doing. There's no shade to men.
I think that makes a lot of sense, though, because I think that also speaks to how we're genders, quote unquote. Obviously, we know gender is super fluid, but like how it's constructed inside, like the binary. Yeah. I think there are different, social skills that people are conditioned with that people are also unprogramming and learning. And we're actually going to get into that a little bit when we get into our relationship section. But kind of speaking to what you're saying, to what everyone is saying, these are actually, as usual, everybody's flowing very well through the questions. Thank you, everybody. But so speaking to that, Ximone, you spoke about the fact that you basically prefer the approach of women, in sexual experiences than that of men. And so, but if we were to think about that more broadly, how do you think people should approach a person for sex? Online or in in-person spaces? Actually, let's I think at this point people have not learned, I'm sure it's still challenging how to navigate, asking for sex or wanting sex, whatever the case may be in online spaces. But I think it's becoming even more challenging in person as well. So how do you think that should be navigated? Especially because I said earlier, I know for me as a woman, I'm definitely on the defense, first. If someone is approaching me outside in New York City, I'm not out here being open to someone asking me out. And I was actually talking about this with a friend the other day, and she mentioned that the only reason she gave her number to this young man is because of the way he asked her if she was in a relationship. And then he said, would you be comfortable if I took you out sometime? And the way he approached her was, so,
That's so cute.
it was so cute. And, and she was not feeling him, but that alone, made her, I don't even want to say like reward. It's not a reward, but it's like, thank you for that approach. It's it's refreshing, So I'm curious, like, do y'all think, like, obviously it wouldn't be refreshing if right after he got her number, he like texted her and was like, cool, like, want to fuck? Like, that would be like fucked up, obviously. Yeah. But like, what is the route that people should take in person? Actually, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, B, and this is actually really not fair because I feel like you are also fluid with how you identify in many ways, but I think also out of the four of us, you may have this understanding most. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, for you, operating in the world, how do you feel most comfortable approaching someone when you're interested in them, even if it's just romantically, not sexually?
I think that in order to do that, they already have to be within like a social sphere of mine, or they have to be someone that I know in some regard, because I've never, and I really probably won't ever just go up to someone and be like, hey, how's it going? And like, start to talk. So thinking it back now to scenes where that has happened, I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know. I think that I'm a very guarded person, and I don't really think I go out of my way to kind of go up to someone and be like, hey, how's it going? There are people that I've met that I've been really attracted to, and there are people that, I'm really interested in, but more often than not, I think I'm maybe one of the people who really, really is thankful for like online dating and kind of, dating apps, because for me, it's a way of making sure that I'm not upsetting someone. I'm not sort of violating their, personal boundaries, because they've also liked me. We've kind of matched with each other, and kind of on that, we have that base level of attraction. I'm also just very nervous and insecure a lot of the times.
He's very sweet.
So it's good to have that level of just, I don't think it's fair to say it's trust, but at least to be like, oh, we're both on the same page on this regard. So yeah, I think it's definitely, I don't know, I think it's definitely difficult for me to go up to someone, because it's a very, very vulnerable act to just randomly go up to someone and be like, hey, am I nice? Like, do I look good? Like, would you want to have sex with me? It's a very vulnerable act. I think it's incredibly vulnerable, and I think it's done by men very poorly for a very long time. I think it's been, manipulative. I think it's been degrading. I think it's, you look at like stupid shows like How I Met Your Mother. I mean, like everything about that show is so bad, but that's sort of
things really don't be aging well.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just kind of like, what is happening? And I think that the times that I've done that, I almost exclusively have been talking to them, and then maybe we start talking, and then it goes from there. I'm not someone who does one-night stands. I really can't do one-night stands. It just doesn't work for me emotionally. It's not something that I'm physically interested in. So I think I'm someone who would like a very kind of long getting to know you period. And that has to begin somewhere. And for me, it's often online, because it's a nice, safe way. And also, if you don't like someone, you can just literally just disappear. You don't have to,
funny.
You're not in someone's space. You don't have to feel like you are, you don't have to jump out of a window at a coffee shop or something.
It's funny you say that. I want Molly and Ximone to get their perspective too, but it's funny. I hate on like dating apps.
Oh, I hate them too.
I hate them, and I'm going to explain why, because everyone explains the way you do be, and every time I hear that, I'm like, that's so true. Like, and then it makes me wonder why it doesn't work for me. I guess I have always, first of all, any romantic or sexual relationship I've had with someone develops from kind of getting to know them first as a friend and seeing if I vibe with them. I've never just like done like kind of like a cold meetup with someone and been like, yeah, you know? And so I think that's part of it. I don't see sex as just a physical thing. I never have. And I think for me, part of that has to do with how I was raised. You know, I was raised Catholic. I think that relationship with sex, you know, I had to kind of navigate through differently. And
what the damage that Catholicism
right.
did to so
honestly,
many kids around the
honestly, listen, that's a whole nother hour.
Literally.
So, you know, I think my relationship with sex kind of always kind of was more about kind of like just like energetic connection that I feel to someone. And that's a lot difficult for me to feel through a screen. I think also a lot of times, like, I find myself I want to carry a conversation first, and that's not what people sometimes are looking for. And so I kind of just feel like I'm carrying a conversation. That's like part one. The other part why I don't like dating apps is because it took a friend telling me that, like, Dash, you can just like unmatch. Like, you don't have to like make this person feel better about the fact that you're basically rejecting them or that you're not interested. And that was really difficult for me because I don't like to make anybody feel bad or feel uncomfortable or feel like there's something wrong with you just because I'm not attracted to you. That for me, I also feel like I'm starting to care about strangers' feelings. It's like what you're saying. I don't know this person, but yet I'm already invested in how I'm making you feel. Like, that's just, it's actually, for some reason, it puts like undue anxiety on me. So you know, and it's tough because it's actually really difficult to meet people in person for a lot of reasons, whether that's working all the time. I've met the two people I was in a relationship with. One I met through a friend who I worked with, and one I met at work. So I feel like that's really how I've learned to navigate those spaces. And in terms of how someone would approach me, we're friends first, and then it naturally turns into something else. I also don't think anyone's just ever, I've been told I'm intimidating, so I don't really get approached a lot in that way, to be honest with you.
Sorry, so it was, how do we want
Your
someone
lordship.
to approach us, ideally? What did you say?
Your lordship.
Thank you.
Ladies.
Yes, I'll awaken now. No, I think that approach, honestly, I don't really want to sit here and tell anybody how to approach me, only because I think that an approach is also just very telling. Like, if you don't have the common sense to just know how to approach someone, it really isn't a step-by-step guide tutorial. Like, you make friends, you make coworker, you know, friends at work, you know how to socialize with people, you know how to get the type of relationships that you want out of someone. I think what works for me is not necessarily, we could have a 5-minute conversation, we could have a 3-week conversation, whatever. I think for me is, what are we talking about? I need to know what we're talking about. I don't want to feel the pressure of sex, even if I know, maybe I want to too. I just don't want to feel that like too soon, because that is a lot of pressure, and I still want the ability to get out, like, without, like you said, Dash, like, disappointing anyone. Not like I care, but you know, it's just for me personally, I don't want to carry that. So I'm like, I definitely would prefer, like, get to know me, like, you know, what do I like? Do you even know what to do once you have me in your hands? Like, I don't even know if you know what to do, because you don't even know what I like. Like, you don't even know what I'm into, what I'm not into. And I'm not going to get in a situation where I'm like, of course we've all been in these situations, but I'm not getting into them anymore, where you're in the middle of something with someone, you're like, actually, fuck, I don't know if this is something I want to keep doing, but I guess I'll just do it because we're here.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that anymore. So it doesn't, I would love to be friends with you. I'm sure that would make for more intimate sex, but I think I just like people. I like energy. If you have a good energy about you, I'm okay with, like, opening myself up with you like that. As far as dating apps go, I have been using dating apps like the entirety of my adulthood, I feel like, since I was like 18 or 19 or so. I guess prior to dating apps, it was just easier because you're in school, you're young, you just have like this pool of people already around you. You know, whatever happens. And it's definitely hard to meet people in real life, hence why, like, I went onto dating apps. And dating apps actually really helped me when it came to dating women, because
I remember you saying that.
in day-to-day, I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like women are just more shy about approaching each other. You don't really know what's going on with each other, especially if it's a queer relationship. Like, you don't know what's going on. But yeah, so when I was using dating apps, I just found like, okay, I can actually talk to them without feeling like, like I'm in front of your face, I don't know what to say. I have some time to come up with an actual response, like lead this conversation somewhere. I feel like a lot of the times for me too, I kind of take on the role of like guiding the conversation a lot when I talk with women. So having a different perspective in the relationship, I guess I kind of prefer, navigating with women than I do with men. It's just easier for me. I've like met men and women that I've dated off of dating apps, all of them. And they were all beneficial relationships for the meanings of just like having a relationship with someone. So I would never like downplay a dating app. I will speak to your point, like it can definitely be a lot of hookups. It could not work for people, but I also think it's time because people are themselves on a dating app just like they are going to be themselves in person. It's just less likely that they're coming up to you in person. So when you have that online, great, unmatch you. I don't want to talk to you, and that's totally respectable and fine as well. And if it gets there, then do that. But otherwise, I just let anybody chitter chat with me.
I think
and if I vibe with you, we can hang. And if I vibe with you, we can hang. And
I need a crash course from Ximone on dating apps etiquette, because your girl really be like, I'm gonna be real honest. You lose my attention real quick. If you keep fucking up your spelling, if you say dumb shit, if you make a stupid, real quick. I'm not even kidding.
Tough.
Yeah.
I know that's tough, but like I remember I was talking to one person and we were talking about a film, and I wrote the name of the film 3 times, and they kept saying an entirely different film.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, you can't
Yeah,
keep
no,
up.
for
I'm
sure.
sorry.
We're talking
Like,
about 2 different movies.
like, what are we? We're not even on the same planet. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. And also like, and I don't even know you, and now I'm trying to like acquiesce this like,
Yeah.
no, like, I just like get like. I get turned off real quick.
I think it's also
is what it is.
Maybe we have. I mean, I guess everyone here is a very creative type. We do have 2 dedicated writers. We have a singer-songwriter. Dash is always having these gorgeous kind of room creations. I think that in and of itself, home decor is a very, very spatially challenging type thing. I think we're all very, creatively minded, but I think maybe, Molly, you could comment on this. I do think that I express myself very adequately through writing and I don't view a difference between texting and communicating and writing.
I'd agree with that too.
And so if you like the way that I speak and the way that I write and the way that like I think we're gonna get along with each other. And sometimes I freeze up in public, and so being able to type things out, retype it, think about it, come back to it, that's really helpful. That's really, really nice, because you really do want to.
I could say it as a good intro, like a good way to kind of introduce yourself. I can definitely see that. I definitely don't think dating apps are something to dog. Like I think like I definitely see their benefit. I definitely also think that they're not for everyone.
By that logic, and like it does make sense, I should probably really like dating apps, but I also hate them so much. And I think it's more so, it's not necessarily the approach part of it. It's just, I don't, and I'm probably putting too much pressure on myself, but the idea of like meeting someone and immediately trying to date them is just so like anxiety ridden to me. Like I don't like having any sort of motivation or like
I do hate when people are like, oh, we want to grab a drink like 2 seconds after talking, and I'm just like, no,
because I'm like, I don't know you, and I don't know why I get so like put off like if people act like really familiar with me too quickly, because I'm like, you don't know me. And I'm also horrible with small talk. I am an awkward, anxious little gal.
Oh, Molly balls.
So dating has actually been such a weird thing, because even just growing up, and sorry mom, I know my sister and I always harp on this, but she had this rule that we were not allowed to date at all until we were 16.
Oh, I had the same rule, so I was 18.
I just would just be like staying away, because I'm like, I'm not allowed. So like I didn't have the like, I feel like there was like very nothing dating experiences that were going on in middle school, and I didn't really have that. And then I like my first relationship was my senior year of high school, and like that was very layered for many different reasons. And then I haven't really had a relationship since then.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say like I don't know how, because that's not true. I do, but it's like
it feels more challenging.
It feels very challenging for me sometimes.
I do want to kind of switch gears a little bit, and it kind of speaks to what we are talking about anyway, but I want to speak specifically about relationships, because I do think, I don't know if y'all have heard this, and I don't know if it's true or not, so that's why I'm asking the question, but do you think people have better sex when they're in relationships?
100%. I think I am always befuddled by the idea of just having sex one time with someone, because it's about kind of just going and continually having sex. And for me, at least, I think that sex has really stopped becoming penetrative sex and been more, fluid, and been more focused on other sorts of things, making sure both people are pleasurable. And for me, sometimes people take a little time to warm to that, and I think I take a little time to warm to that too. And of course, it's just going to be a lot better over time. But I've also been in relationships where towards the end of it, you're just phoning it in,
Yeah, I hate
and
that.
That sucks. I mean, that sucks a lot. I think once you have great sex, why would you ever have bad sex again?
I love that. Any other thoughts on that?
I agree, but also, like, the thing is, I've never gotten to, like, being in a relationship with someone and having sex, because my relationship that I had in high school, I didn't lose my virginity to him. So, like, I've had consistent sexual partners, and I've always enjoyed that sex better.
Yeah.
But I never know if that's just, like, still part of, like, the excitement that, like, if we were together, it would be, like, a honeymoon phase or something. But I do agree for the most part, and this probably just goes to what I was saying about, like, demisexuality is just, like, I just feel more comfortable asking for what I want, or, like, saying no to things that I don't want to do. And I don't even think, because, like, I used to have, like, one-night stands in college, and that was mostly because, like, I'd lost my virginity, and then I was like, well, I want to do it again, but I don't have a boyfriend. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Right. Like, so I was just, like,
come on now.
I was, like, kind of sacrificing a little bit for that. And then it's not necessarily that, like, those times that, like, guys would, like, try to do things that, like, I think they also would just do, like, standard things because they also didn't know me. So,
they don't know how comfortable you are exploring
so it
things.
was easier with people that I already knew for even, like, him to be like, oh, can we try this?
Right.
And I'd be like, yeah.
Like I'm down.
Yeah. Because that's the other thing. Like, I'm down to try most things.
Yeah.
But I have to be comfortable with the person first.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Sorry, one more
again with the question.
Sorry.
Do you think people have better sex in relationships?
Okay. I think that there's no answer really. But I think I
think that's fair actually.
I think that's realistic about everything, honestly. But I think for me personally, I like sex with people that I like. I've definitely had really good sex. So I've only been in 2, like, actual relationships, right? And one was very short, and it was like the beginning of my, like, sexual experiences. And the one that I just ended now was pretty lengthy, but I definitely felt more intimate and definitely, like, closer with the person that I just dated. But even still, like, dating people casually, like, I was, like Molly said, I was dating someone casually, or, like, having consistent sexual experience with someone that I wasn't in a relationship with, but I was still having pretty good sex. I don't know. I think also sex is, like, me sometimes, too. Like, it's not necessarily just a person. Like, we can have a great fucking connection. Like, you could be looking great in front of me, but sometimes it's just not there. I don't know if that's more of a I don't know if that maybe I don't know what that is actually. I don't know if that's like part of like anxiety or anything like that. But I think a lot of the times if I'm comfortable and I'm there in that situation, I wouldn't be there if I didn't want to be there. Then I know that I'm gonna have like a pleasurable experience to like be more than happy to walk away with.
I feel like everyone's responses are so true to their personalities.
Yeah.
You know, which is why I think your first answer makes a lot of sense because I kind of agree with everyone. For me, the great sex that comes in a relationship is because of my emotional tie to that person. Like, I just love them.
Yeah.
So I love everything about them. I love exploring their body and vice versa. And like, sex isn't like, it's like I can just lay naked with you, but I could also just walk around the room naked, even when we're not having sex. You know, it's the comfortability of it that makes it so beautiful. And that's where I agree with B. It's like, I know what I can come back to safely, and I know what I can explore safely, and like what I can even add into the mix safely. You know, like there are different things, different conversations I can have with that person that don't limit how I can experience sex, you know? But in the same token, I remember there was a period after my last relationship was like, which at this point was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think. I don't know. I never keep track of time that way. But, which was, you know, it was a profound experience. I really, really deeply loved that person. I'll always love that person. But afterwards, I had some of the best sex just because I knew what I wanted was simply to be satisfied physically in that way. And that's all I needed. I wasn't looking for anything else. So I also think it's what you're seeking, you know, and what serves you. There are some people that they really don't want to be in relationships, you know, but they have needs and, you know, there's pleasure. For me, at the end of the day, as long as it's consensual and as long as two people understand, you know, you're on the same page, there's a communication you're both comfortable with, and you're not harming anyone or harming yourselves, you know, I think that you can have the best sex in any sort of dynamic, honestly, you know?
I think that there's a really, I was just thinking through what everyone was talking about, trying to think about how sometimes we forget nowadays how much has had to happen from the people who came before us, who may have been like us, you know, queer, you know, people of color, you know, women. I mean, we forget how much they have struggled and sacrificed to let us be in situations now where, you know, I can reasonably entertain having, you know, a relationship with a man. And I was thinking about, you know, early 1950s, like cruising scenes where these men were really truly unable to have relationships, long-lasting relationships, and cruising was a way for them to, you know, satisfy this deeply secret, personal, you know, desire and passion that they had. And sometimes now I think it's such an absolute pleasure and privilege to be able to be with the people you love and to just be able to, like you said, Dash, I mean, I think that just, you know, exploring people's bodies and also just lying naked next to someone is one of the best possible sexual experiences you could have. And I think it's incredible to think that we're at a place where we can entertain those things and be with those people that we love. And I think that's maybe that's something that is lost before, is that some people just thought that sex was this like fundamental ahistorical action that everyone did and it meant nothing, whereas, you know, coming from like the queer community, sex was such an integral part of identity and praxis and activism and revolution. And that is a great takeaway, I think, from thinking about sex in the modern era, is how much people had to struggle to be able to have sex with people they wanted to. And that's really worthwhile. And that's what makes sex great for me, I think, is thinking about that.
I love
Talk
that.
about it.
Talk about it for real. So I guess this question also, I think is it's very subjective as well, but do you think there should be universal sexual deal breakers? Like just kind of things that and that question is also really difficult because, again, like, it's subjective. What's a sexual deal breaker for you? But I guess, like, I'm asking this question because I remember when I was in grad school, I had a friend who told me that she hooked up with a guy who basically asked her to kick him in the nuts. Like that.
Wow.
repeatedly. That's like what he wanted. And she did it.
Okay.
And she did it. But, you know, obviously I was like, girl, like if that went the wrong way, like you could have really hurt this man. Like, you know, so I guess that's where my question is coming from. Like, are there things that, like, at least at a hookup level, that we really maybe should not participate in? Or are we kind of the mind that if someone's asking for it and they're okay with it, then you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm definitely of the mind that there shouldn't be any limitations to your sexual exploration or needs or whatever. I definitely tried to be a dominatrix for like a minute in my life.
Yes.
And had this one guy who wanted like needles through his ball sack, like literal needles. And I'm sitting there like before
Oh my god.
Medically, that's quite complex. You have to have like a nurse's degree.
Oh my
for
gosh,
that.
B.
yeah, so and this was through text, like just knowing like what he was into basically before anything. But so it was just like what to what extent, like what do you need, like I need to know, like are you dead ass, like
Right.
how many, like how long, like what is going on here.
Shout out to you.
So
No.
She's so diligent.
so we have like this probably 20-minute like text exchange, and at the end of it I was just like, no, I personally don't feel comfortable doing this because I don't want to do this. I just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But that's fine that I don't want to fucking do that. I'm sure that
Right.
somebody will want to do that for you, and you'll have that done for you.
Yeah.
So as long as nothing's like you said earlier, like the things that people don't really talk about, like you're not harming anyone or anything or yourself, I think you should have full reign to do whatever you want. I mean, y'all know that I talked to someone who has very crazy
Yes. Sexual proclivities.
very crazy sexual things that they
I
want
was
to
just
do.
about to say, I just really appreciate that you're someone who makes that like an okay space for people to
Yeah.
like,
I
yes,
agree.
don't
at
all
least
come
be
to me
able
now.
to ask. No, oh my god, no.
You never make anyone ashamed for what might be
Yeah.
considered bizarre.
Yeah.
And I think there's not a lot of open spaces for that, for people
Yeah.
to comfortably. I know for myself, Simone, if I was in the same position as you and some of the things you've told me have been said to you, I'm going to sit here and be real with myself. I think I'm a kind person. I'm an open person. I'm not sure how I would respond.
Yeah,
I'm not
know
sure
either,
how I would or if I would respond. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
quite honest, and I don't know if that makes me. I'm not saying that makes me a better or worse person, but I do think that speaks to your openness and your own comfortability and
You
your
know
own
why?
security with yourself and what because you know what you will or won't allow for yourself. It's like you're okay with hearing what other people will or won't allow for themselves.
Yeah, and I also think along the way of just allowing people to talk about everything that they're into, I'm also learning things that I'm into and things that I'm not into. And it kind of just settles the score for me along the way. And I think we all have this like freaky deaky, this freaky
100%.
deaky. We don't even know what they are in full capacity
until you get tapped
until
into
you
it.
fucking get put onto some shit, and you're like, oh yeah, I actually do like my whole foot in your mouth. Like,
So
that's something that I want.
Big mouth.
that is a big one. My lord.
So I'm down. Tell me what you want. If I don't want to do it, I'm not gonna do it. If I do, then we can
Wow.
do it.
It's
Come on
wild
now.
how people also can open up
Damn.
for you a specific thing that you had not felt before. My most recent relationship, I realized that for some reason I was just really into the idea of people watching us having sex. And that was something that never was able to actually come to fruition, quite literally. But that was something that I got really into it. I was like, why am I just so into this as an idea?
Yeah.
And that was something I never felt before. And so when you say, are they universal deal breakers? Some people who just want certain things, you're like, yeah, okay, let's try that. Or, I think that they're, okay, yes, there are I think there are boundaries that when they begin to approach on the horizon, you're like, this can move into something really problematic.
Yeah.
I knew someone in college who one of their partners asked them to pretend to be like a dead body. And
no, not necrophilia.
they did that, and I struggle with the idea of...
Oh, I don't know. This is what I'm talking about.
I struggle with the idea of how much power and comfortability does consent let us have, and whether or not, it was two consensual adults consenting to this thing, and whether or not the fetish was indicative of maybe a more problematic and a more taboo idea, I do wonder at the end of the day, it's, you know, if he asked a living consensual adult to maybe do this thing.
Come on, philosophy.
And it begins with consent. And if it begins with consent, then who are we to say that people can't do things?
Right.
Now, again, there are people like those, what are they called? Virtuous pedophiles who are say that they're interested in kids, but they would never like cross that boundary.
Right.
And it's such a tricky thing. You know, do you think
it's a slippery slope?
Is it emblematic of wanting to do this, you know, for instance, with a dead body, wanting to be with a dead body, but you can't, so I'm going to settle for this? Or is it that for some reason
you have some sort of, it intrigues you in some way?
This intrigues you. And those are the things that then enter into a really, that's almost like expert mode. That's when you can't. You have to be a whole other type of person.
It's super real.
Yeah.
It's super real.
Well, I also
the confidence to ask someone, "Can you be a dead body?"
I know.
out of this world.
I'm gonna let Molly say what you need to say, but I'm gonna add to what you said, B.
Well, I also and I know that no one was saying this, but I just wanted it to be very clear. Like, yes, it should be, there shouldn't be any limitations, but don't just try something. Yeah. Like, especially if you don't know that if everyone's okay with it.
Sure, 100%.
Because my worst, sexual experience that, content warning, I kind of categorize as an assault. Mm-hmm. It came from, him just doing things without asking, and I was just and I just froze.
Yeah.
And so, that should, I guess, be the deal breaker, is, if you're just gonna try it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's...
communication, man.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really salient point to make. That what predicates, I think the almost like the baseline of a deal breaker is if there's not consent or communication. That B's point, when I was in college, senior year, I had completed all the courses I needed to take to graduate, so I just took a whole bunch of electives. And one of my favorite classes was a sex class, and it was actually about sexual fetishes and just kind of uncommon sexual fetishes. And it was really interesting because I was learning about people who get off on balloons popping. And how there are full-on conventions in Florida for people to go and test out the latex and see if it's to their sensational feeling, And so I remember in that class thinking to myself, what would I do if I was attracted to someone who eventually over time told me that they would like me to pop a balloon while we're having sex? And that class really opened up my mind into understanding kind of what B was saying, almost what are my moral codes and my principles, and how have those been established for me to be open to certain things or closed off for certain things, and what are areas where I want to challenge myself on that. So I guess my answer to that balloon question is I would be okay with it. Yeah. I honestly would, because that's not something to me that's incredibly harmful. Now, to B's example of if someone asked me to lie down and pretend I was dead, I wouldn't be comfortable with that because I would have that concern where I was why and I don't know, again, I have to sometimes say to myself, that doesn't make me a bad person. If I'm well, why are you interested in that? For me, that's uncomfortable. That makes me actually scared, for other reasons. I know my mind, it's going to spiral in other directions and always wonder where that intrigue sources from. And I got to be honest with myself. I don't know if I could find a middle ground with someone where I could understand their explanation, just because just the sentiment alone frightens me, Yeah. So I think deal breakers are also subjective on what your own fears might be or your own comfortability. And I think it's you shouldn't make anyone feel ashamed about what they may like or want, granted, to Molly's point, if it's consensual and, if they communicate, but also you shouldn't feel ashamed about what you don't want. Yeah, I guess is how I look at it.
I recently learned that in the brain, the ways in which our brains are folded and the ways in which our nervous system connects with our brain, right next to each other is the sensation, the spot for our genitals, and right next to it is our feet. And the things that we feel. And they talk about how people who have foot fetishes literally have crossed wires in their brain that for some reason their brain confuses the signals between the two, and quite literally for them
Foot
it's
and
like
mouth.
it's a I think literally I think it's like feet and hands or something are right next to each other in genitals, and quite literally people who have foot fetishes, because it's the most common, literally it's like it's the same thing as being, you know, touched in your genitals, the same thing of kind of doing that,
the same sensation.
and there's a great book called Eros and Civilization by a German philosopher named Herbert Marcuse, but he talks about how part of
I was
a
waiting
potential
for your book drop.
I really have been trying to limit it. And, part of the revolution is what he says is opening up our autoerogenous zones, and he thinks that genitalia being the focus of sex is a heteropatriarchal conception of reproductive capacities only being linked to sexual. And he says that, you know, introducing new parts of the body as being erogenous, erotic zones is a way to attempt to subvert and subdue these latent heteropatriarchal feelings. And that's something that I've been like, whoa, that's really cool. When I first learned it, I first like studied it, I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then most recently, I got my most recent relationship got really into nipple play, and I was like, this is a great, this is a whole new world for me. And I think sex and love are often world making, and so having a new facet of your sexual life is a whole new world for you to explore.
People are learning so much about us. This will be interesting to listen back to. So I have one last question for relationships, and then we'll hop into sex education, and then we'll close it out, y'all. So last relationship question before we get into sexual education is, how do you think you should navigate talking about sexual health with your partners, whether that's committed or casual relationships? So like in terms of getting tested, is that a comfortable conversation? How would you navigate that?
I don't really know how to navigate that. I think even still, I mean, it's very rare that someone will ask me, like, just straight up to the face or anything like that. I don't think I've ever actually been in that situation before. But personally, I don't ask, which obviously it could be skewed, but I use protection for the most part. I mean, with women, it's definitely difficult. But in the moments where I was engaging in sex with men, I would always try to use protection if I didn't know what was going on. But I usually honestly don't really navigate in a way where I'm like, okay, like what are we? I know that one of my friends though, she's like, send me, a picture, or do you have something on your phone or something, like log into whatever records you can. But I think it's still like a very hard conversation for me to have sometimes. I don't know why. I'm not worried. I'm usually just not worried, and I try to be as protective as possible. But there's no telling. There's really no fucking telling. So
yeah. I mean, like, health professionals often talk that the most damaging part of diseases is the stigma around them and the mental anguish it causes people. And I think that I'm very upfront. I'm very upfront. I ask. I tell them as well. I get tested frequently or semi-regularly, and I think that if we're going to be moving forward as a society, talking about sex more, being more sex positive, I think that we really have to stop moralizing contracting diseases. I mean, look at what happened in the pandemic. We can't stop people from infecting us. We can't stop people from how things happen. And there's a difference between someone willingly being ignorant and knowing they have something, and then kind of engaging in these things. I mean, for instance, I think it's a very homophobic law, but there is laws about whether or not HIV positive people who then go have sex with other people, then that's considered like a crime. That's considered assault if they have, and the other person doesn't know and they hide it, which I think is that very much can be a form of assault. I do think that the law is rooted in homophobia, because for a while there were laws that if you thought that an HIV positive person might affect you, you were legally allowed to like kill them or beat the crap out of them. There were numerous cases about that. But I think that end of the day, if you're approaching it from a completely non-moral standpoint, or at the very least trying to be like, if it is, that's totally okay. We'll work with that and we'll figure out how to be safe for both of us.
Same.
But I think that Susan Sontag, AIDS and Its Metaphors. Great book. I highly recommend it for everyone.
Come on, is that number 2 or number 3?
Number two. Number two. But I think that a cause that I'm very passionate about, because it's caused me so much mental anguish of the possibility of getting something and how deeply we attach sex to our personal identities. I think a really important cause, really important, hopefully, social shift that we try to do is moving away from moralizing sexual diseases, because I think it will lead to healthier sex. I think that if everyone is demoralizing it and not treating it like this secret private thing, people will get more care more, people will get tested more, people will do these things.
As always, for some reason in this conversation I feel like I'm straddling between everyone, because I've been in Ximone's position where I've just kind of been like, I feel comfortable enough, I think I'll be fine, there's protection involved. But I do think once I'm in a relationship with someone, I think I think I've had the conversation where I've said have you, how do you feel, or how have you gotten tested, blah, 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 vice versa, I think it kind of happens organically when I think of my last relationship, and that person wasn't uncomfortable, just having the conversation with me. But I think it's also because we'd gotten to a different point of comfortability in general. I would say my approach to it is I'm down to go with someone. Let's just go together. This is something to make sure that we both feel comfortable. This isn't just about me. This is also about you, So I think I kind of operate from a space of just making sure that that person knows that it's not because I don't trust them, but it's actually to show them that they can trust me as well. So that's how I navigate through that space. But speaking of sexual health, that actually ties us into our last category, y'all.
Can I say one last thing?
Absolutely, B.
The last thing I would say is getting tested is also indicative of whether or not you can get tested, and I think that that's a really important thing to consider.
T.
I've been with someone who wasn't able to have insurance, and for them getting tested would be a very expensive thing.
Yeah.
And I'm still on my parents' plan, so those sorts of costs are. I mean, for some reason I got one recently. It was so expensive, and so that's something else to consider. We can't just be blindly saying get tested, it's the easiest thing in the world. No, it's super expensive. It takes a lot of time. If you have to work frequently, you would maybe have to take the the day that you have off. It's
so
I think
it's more take precaution, kids.
Take precaution, and also recognize that some people just can't get tested.
Yeah.
And that's something that isn't their fault.
Right.
Because this nation won't give everyone universal health care.
Come on, T. Come on
Yes,
now.
seriously.
Shift it into the larger conversation. Which shifts us into a different larger conversation, which is sex education. I don't know when anybody took sex ed here. I took it, I think, freshman year of high school. It was, for me personally, it was incredibly traumatizing. I feel like everything was kind of spoken about very coldly and really kind of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And for me as a woman, it was very much you're going to have sex and you're eventually going to have a child. Yeah. And then I remember seeing a video of a baby being born, and I was shell-shocked because it was just a head coming out of vaginal canal. And I was just whoa. It was just and granted, again, kind of to Molly's point, I wasn't allowed to date up until I was 18 years old. My exposure to sex was definitely sneaking it where I could and kind of hearing a conversation where I could. So I wouldn't say my knowledge of sex was really something, I don't know, that I was able to explore comfortably, and I don't think sex education was helpful for me. So I'm curious, what is one thing you'd wish you'd learned prior to having sex?
Well, just to talk about sex education, from my sex education, I didn't even learn how sex happens. I learned that I remember the parts of the uterus and all of that, the vagina and everything, and we learned about the parts of the penis and everything, and I did see the birth and everything. But after that, it was diseases. We would talk about diseases.
Yeah, you're right. That was the setup.
Yeah. And then, so I remember I was in 9th grade, and I went home, and I was like, Mom, I am too old to not know. I don't know how it happens.
Yeah,
Just
right.
the,
High level.
Just the idea that, there's stuff that you do beforehand.
I don't really think there's... I felt pretty equipped, honestly. I felt pretty equipped by the time I was doing it. I think there should be a whole separate course for girls and boys, men and women, whatever. Only because I think a lot of these boys, I was doing things with, didn't go to class or something. I don't know. They just didn't understand, like, what was going on. I think, I don't need to know anything else, but I think a lot of boys need to know a lot more. And I'm specifically saying that only because you have the penis. Most people are straight. Like, I'm just saying that for the basis blanket thing. But there should be just more education on just, like, how to, like, everything that we've dialogued about before this moment.
Not just the physicality.
There should be so much more dialogue about that, because with and luckily I didn't have any, like, a restriction on dating or anything like that. I just didn't date. But even when I did have sex, there was, like, hesitancy in telling my mom. Not like she would, feel any type of way about it. But it's just, like, that wasn't a good experience. Like, I'm sure if I told you this, like, that's not good, because this person didn't even know what to do with me. And I didn't know how to combat that.
Yeah, there's also something to be said about, like, so I didn't know how it happened, but also that's only penetrative sex.
Right. There's so much more.
There's so much more. And there's nothing in the, and I know, like it's such a tricky line with, like, minors teaching them about pleasure and everything, but, like, still, like, it was just very much like, these are the parts of the penis, these are the parts of the vagina.
It was very mechanical.
This is a baby being born. Here's a bunch of diseases.
I think it's because we make it almost this taboo thing that, if someone's 14 or 15 and sexually interested in something, I know for women, that's like, you're loose, or like you're promiscuous, or like you're too sexual too soon. And I think instead of us navigating that, maybe you're not too sexual too soon, but this is, the level, this may be where you're at right now in your life, and this is how you can navigate those feelings, and this is how you should be made, this is how you should consider your own comfortability in these situations. And this is where, maybe you want to consider, what different pressures you might encounter. Like, I feel like there's a way to talk about it where it's not just about the act,
right,
but what leads up to the act and what happens after the act and how you'll feel during the act. And I don't think any of that is happening in sexual education, and I almost feel like that's what's missing from the curriculum.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because, like, with your mom, you said, like, you've never really had those kinds of conversations, but my mom never shied away from that.
Yeah.
Like,
it's interesting.
it's very interesting that we still had that rule, but, like, if I ever was curious about something, I could always ask.
That's
because
great.
Completely open and the safe person to talk to about all that.
But there's still been
at
gaps.
The same time, we weren't allowed to have any contact with boys until we were 16.
It's that, because it's that weird middle ground where it's like, at least I feel like with what you're expressing, it's like your mom wants you to be comfortable with the knowledge of it in theory.
Yeah.
But not in action.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, I didn't even have the in theory part. All of a sudden at 18, it was like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And it was like, how, I don't know how to do that. I don't actually know how to navigate any of that, because I never was allowed to explore it really in a way comfortably. So it's very interesting how you're expected to kind of switch and know what you're doing and know how to navigate that. It was very shell-shocking to kind of have to navigate that as an adult. I always felt like I was behind. I always felt like I didn't know what I was doing, or that I was less attractive for that reason, because I don't know how to engage with someone in that way, and they're going to think like I'm an amateur. Like, it was such a weird hang up to kind of have to navigate through and catch up with, honestly, as an adult. And I do think part of sexual education occurs at home, and that's a really important aspect. And that's the piece you're talking about, Molly, that I do think is important, being comfortable to be able to talk to someone about it, and knowing that that's a safe space, no matter your experiences, no matter when you become sexually active. I think conversations about sex will progress in 2021. Not that little chuckle into the arm, Ximone. Is that question too abstract?
No. I don't know. It's a loaded question. I think, I guess for all intents and purposes, this is a podcast put on Spotify for people to listen. And if I am going to say anything, it's going to be things from my ideal world.
Okay.
But
yes, she prefaced that very clearly.
I think that the conversation of sex, especially with the statistics that you were giving earlier, I don't personally see it going, like, in a productive place. For some reason, I have a feeling that, like, age and experience really do that for you, and as you get older you'll be able to have more open conversations. I think it's also really important to note that like everyone is doing everything for the first time at that moment in their lives. So I can give advice as a 25-year-old, you know, to fucking 14-year-olds or 19-year-olds or 50-year-olds that are single, whatever the case is, but I doubt that it would be similar. I think if you want to try to navigate this conversation, like we said, boundaries are very important to speak about. Consent we already know, but making that more of like, you know how asking like what are your pronouns are becoming like part of the first part of things. I think talking about consent, it should be within the first reins of things.
Yeah.
And I think above all, sex is pleasurable. We should be only engaging in things that are bringing us that pleasure, and if you're getting that, do whatever it is that you're doing. Like, there's no right or wrong way.
Yeah.
Do with people who are also enjoying those things and go off. Like, there's really nothing to really have to dialogue about. I feel like, I don't know if sex should become like a communal topic of like right and wrongs or anything like that, because it is like such a sensitive space to do whatever you want to do. You know, obviously sharing that with a person or not. But yeah, do whatever the fuck you want to do. And I think if you're navigating that way and are leaving room for everyone else to do what they want to do, and if you want to talk about that with each other and you're open about it, go ahead.
Okay.
Also, I think maybe more so this year, I think we're done having sex with Republicans.
Ooh, come on,
I
2020.
think that in 2021, I think people are really truly thinking about who they associate with and what they do with those people.
Yeah.
And people want to talk about the death of like,
That
you know,
energy.
sort of discourse in America. I think, you know, that's ludicrous. I think that we shouldn't entertain
Luda.
I don't think we should entertain people, you know, who are just bad people. You know, like, I don't know how you could, if you think at the end of the day that certain people shouldn't have rights or certain people shouldn't be afforded the life that others are afforded. For instance, I mean, I saw someone briefly who was, they voted for Trump, and I was like, I am openly a queer person with you. Like, I'm queer.
Right,
like, how are you,
right.
what is going on in your head? And they were like, I don't know. I just think that,
know.
like,
Yeah,
they're like,
right.
I
See,
voted for Trump for,
no.
you know, whatever. But, you know, at the end of the day, I was like, you know, Trump is violently homophobic. Like, you know, people try to be like, oh, he did the most. Like, no, I mean, hate crimes increased X amount of % during his presidency.
Yeah, even
like,
just after, like, days after he got elected.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that we're really truly thinking who we want to be with as as an individual, and I think that that's really important. And I think moving forward, maybe in 2021, that's a conversation that's going to be had, and I think that that is a good thing, because Republicans should not be getting laid.
Oh, dang. You heard it right. I feel like that wraps it up really, really nicely.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for coming here to have this conversation. Y'all, this is the first time I'm recording in a studio.
Woo! Shout out Pirate Studios in Ridgewood, New York.
For real, though.
Money moves.
Period. Come on
Demographics
now.
increasing. Know yourself, know your worth.
Yeah.
Yes, come on. You're made of
BK all day.
stardust. Come on. Oh, my gosh. Again, though, thank you all for being here and having this conversation. Of course, y'all, it's a broad topic. I think, you know, as always, as I always say, this is the first season of the show. Who knows how it will, you know, progress and how we'll continue to navigate through these conversations. I always say that I'm happy to have these guests back on. The last thing that I just want to plug, if y'all have anything that you want to share, anything you're working on, anything that you think is worthwhile to share with people, if you have another book, if you have a movie recommendation, Ximone, if you have any new music coming out, just feel free to plug whatever you want. It's okay if you don't either.
I recently read a book by a French author named Edouard Louis. He is primarily a nonfiction writer, but he writes beautifully and with great attention to detail about growing up gay in a rural French town. And he recently, one of his famous books that came out is called The History of Violence, and it discusses a incident where he was sexually assaulted, and it's a very sort of traumatic story, but it is maybe in my mind one of the best examples of how to talk about sex, how to talk about trauma, how to talk about these, you know, the combination of them, and the way in which he talks about how it's an incredible book. It's a short read. He's a beautiful writer, And if you want to get into that sort of thing, I think it also speaks to everyone across, not just, gay men. So that's a book that I would highly recommend to anyone in addendum to this conversation.
I'll say that I am a recording artist, so feel free to listen to my music. You can listen to it anywhere under Lord Scorpio. I am working on a project, but I think just for this conversation, maybe referencing a song of mine called Queen. It's pretty much about queer love, black love, intimacy, beauty, all those types of things. I think it's a great listen. Add it to your sex playlist. I don't know.
Did I tell you my papa loves that song?
Oh my god, yeah. So yeah, Papa said it. So
Joe McDonough loves that song.
yes, there we go. That's all I need.
I love that.
I don't have anything that I'm like working on. I'm trying to think of something that I've seen lately that. The only thing that's coming to mind right now, it has nothing to do with sex, but a show that I like watched very quickly on HBO is called Hacks. And it's about, like, comedians, like, intergenerational, like, Jean Smart is one of the main characters, and I can't remember her, like, the actress's name who plays Ava, but, she's, like, around our age, and it's sort of, like, the interaction of, like, millennial Gen Z comedy and like older comedy, and it's just like I just really liked it and I watched it very quickly.
I mean, I do think that's fair to this conversation in a way because it kind of shows the nuances of social interactions.
Yeah,
maybe we can stretch it that way. Yeah. Obviously, y'all, what I've got to share is just a dash. So that concludes this episode. Say what? Woo! Oh, okay, I'm counting us down in 3, 2,
just a dash.
Okay, y'all, so this is a different type of rec room because I actually don't have anything really crazy on deck that I want to share with y'all in terms of like content, like, movie or films or anything like that. But, I was thinking about the fact that I am currently working on a self-care menu. So a self-care menu for me, it's something that I had spoken about with my life coach that I wanted to do. And it was basically when I find myself in certain anxious states of being or, responding to a trigger or feeling guilt or shame, or if I feel like my needs are being dismissed, whatever the case may be, you have a response to it, whether that's, I think in some cases, you may have trouble breathing, if you have anxiety that way, or, you gorge on food, or you watch a whole bunch of TV, or you can't sleep, kind of all these ways that your mind spins out of control. I wanted to find ways to replace those areas in my life with more positive influences and positive ways to respond to situations where I don't feel like my needs and desires are being met or heard, So just finding different ways to kind of nurture myself and take care of myself. So one of those ways, is through food. I'm definitely a person. My roommates know this about me. I'm not a big sweets person, but when I'm really stressed out, I have certain stress foods. And one of them is always coconut cake. I love coconut cake, y'all. That's just a little fun fact about me. But I have gone into the habit of now replacing that sugary sweet when I'm really stressed out, when I'm really in the throes and the crux of, usually it's a work dilemma. I'll have this coconut cake and I can eat like a whole box by myself, y'all. It's a very small little cake. But I also have been replacing this with a different snack, a different sort of stress food that's healthier. And I've shared it with people before, but they always seem surprised by this food combination. So I wanted to recommend it because I find it quite delicious and nutritious. And it also is just like a healthy sort of sweet snack that I think works well when you are looking for a replacement for a dessert. Basically, a long way of saying here's a healthy dessert. So that would be grapefruit with honey on it. So I slice up grapefruit, I slice the skin off. It's actually really easy to peel off. I slice it up and I literally just pour honey all over my grapefruit and I eat that. And it's really, really refreshing. I really love tart flavors, so I just love the grapefruit itself. I know some people who toss a little bit of sugar on it, but it's just a really, really delicious snack, y'all. That's one snack that I would recommend. My other snack that I've known for is Ritz crackers with salmon and smoked salmon and I usually use brie cheese and Kalamata olives. I eat Kalamata olives like they're candy. But that snack combo, y'all, is also really good, really savory, a great snack bite for, in front of the screen if you're watching a movie. So I kind of wanted to just kind of give like a food sort of recommendation just because those are two of my favorites and they work well for snacks. They work well when I'm stressful and I'm about to hop in and like eat candy or if I'm gonna, eat cake or just kind of eat anything that's not good for me because food at the end of the day also carries energy, and so kind of reprogramming immediate satisfaction for substantial energy is something that I've definitely tried to be more mindful of. So those are kind of two snacks that kind of do that for me. In terms of other recommendations too, I know like as we're transitioning out of COVID, it's really challenging, I think, to want to become social again. And I think, it's really difficult sometimes to know the best ways to do that. And so I just wanted to recommend to folks that, it is okay to find different ways to also be social at home. So what I mean by that is something that I've also tried to do is like I'll craft at night or I'll try to have or as roommates we try to have a craft night or we have a movie night together or we just engage with each other like in our apartment. And I think that has really kind of made a difference for us just in terms of finding support with one another as we're trying to transition back into social spaces. But something I've also done is even when I don't feel in the headspace to go out, I try to implement it somehow. So this is what I mean. Last weekend, I really wasn't in the best headspace. I really just kind of felt disconnected from my sense of self. I think I felt like I am transitioning in a lot of spaces in my life in terms of what I want to be doing professionally, what I'm doing personally, and even the people who I'm keeping in my life just constantly go, I think, through different evolutions in your life. And so I was just kind of stuck in this very heavy headspace of kind of analyzing and processing and going through all that. And I'm doing it in my room, right? My beautiful peachy sunroom that I love, but I'm still stuck there. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go to Smorgasburg. I'm going to go outside. I don't feel like it. I don't have anyone to go with. I kind of feel lonely in some ways. But I'm going to go outside and I'm going to do something. And I did, y'all. And I kind of just let the day take me. And I don't really do that. I'm a person who likes to have a plan. I like to know what I'm doing next, the things I need to get done, where's my to-do list. I mean, I have a to-do list even for the fun things that I plan to do, you know? But I took a day and I picked one kickoff spot and then I just kind of let the day take me where it took me. I thought of different things I wanted to do, different things I wanted to see, just sat down in a park, just thought about things, just wrote things down, just actually made room for myself to exhale, to release the tension, to breathe, and also to not even focus on anything that's not serving me. I think a lot of times, a lot of stress, anxiety, conflict, other people projecting their shit onto you, it can really take up a lot more mental capacity and mental space than we should allow. And I think sometimes just stepping outside of your environment, allowing the day to kind of, allowing something greater to kind of take the reins, to kind of help you through the next steps, to kind of guide you through opening up your mind, healing your heart. I think it's really important to do to really kind of carve out those spaces for yourself. So, just a recommendation that, as you're trying to navigate social spaces again, or just become more comfortable in your skin in social spaces and public spaces, don't feel a sort of, pressure to have to do it with anybody. It's okay to spend time with yourself to kind of ease yourself back into it and kind of let the, if even if it's one activity at a time, go to a park and sit in a park and read. If it's not for you, try and find a different activity that makes you feel active. Invest in yourself, whether you go rock climbing, you find a friend to play tennis with, like just one activity that kind of shakes up your week a little bit differently or just allows you the space to carve out time for yourself to release that tension from your body, that stress from your body. We all carry it. We all take on other people's shit. We all sometimes give shit and put shit onto people, you know? It's okay to carve out time for yourself to release that, and you don't kind of owe it to anybody, you know, how much social time you're giving to them versus you're giving to yourself as we're trying to get back to interacting with other people. So that was a hodgepodge of basically saying that, you know, it might be awkward at first to kind of want to share your space again with other people, and that's okay. Maybe it's important to start out with yourself and kind of feel comfortable feeling active and in a better mental state with yourself before you start interacting with other people. And I have done that myself, and I have found it incredibly just useful, helpful, beneficial. So that's the rec room this week. It's definitely a little bit different than it typically would be in the future. I think the very last thing that I want to recommend is just a song. I might just do this like the song of the episode. I'm definitely that person, y'all, who just gets into like certain moods. I get into moods with songs. I'm very much a Cancerian that way. My playlist is kind of set up that way, where it's just depending on the headspace that I'm in. I just have very specific genres of music that I like to listen to. But the song that I am going to recommend this time around is by Candy Staton. I think that I've mentioned it before, maybe on an Instagram story, but it's Young Hearts Run Free. I love this song so much. It speaks very much just about how this woman, the woman singing, how she it's a wistful song. She's thinking about how she wished she navigated romance differently and how she wishes she had held more space for herself and her autonomy and her joy and her laughter and her freedom. And she basically encourages the generations afterwards to hold on to the benefits of self preservation and letting your young heart run free. So it's a true anthem, and it's one that I've really been enjoying recently. I really kind of kicked off Pride for me, and it's just kind of been holding on really strong since then. So Candy Staton, Young Hearts Run Free, y'all, add it to your playlist. And with that being said, you know, we have come to another end of an episode, a really great episode that I hope y'all enjoyed. I want to thank my special guest again, Brendan, Molly, Ximone. Y'all know how much I appreciate and care about y'all. It was wonderful sharing the space with you. I'm sure they'll be back on again, y'all. If you want to hear them again for another topic, let me know. I'm happy to make it a special segment of some sort. Who knows how season 2 will change, but I was so grateful to have them on. They really each brought their own flavor, their own personality, their own spice. Y'all know it's a fun household with the 4 of us, but thank you to you 3 again. I so appreciate you, and I will definitely see you at home. And shout out to everyone else. Remember, y'all, that you are made of stardust, that the world is a much better place because you are in it. Go out there, kick some ass, and stay fly. Catch you on the airwaves next time, sweet peas.